Hey, what's up, BookTube? This is Blighted Pine Books. Today we're going to be taking a look at this novel by Nathan Hill, Wellness. In the modern world, you open up your phone, and with every scroll of the thumb is something you desire. Maybe it's a trip to a place you've never been to. Maybe it's a relationship you don't currently have. Maybe it's the 10 pounds you've been trying to shed, or a cosmetic surgery that perhaps you can afford. Everything is after our attention, and everything is asking us to question whether or not our lives are currently satisfactory, or if we couldn't perhaps purchase something that is going to finally help us arrive to true wellness. In the book, Nathan Hill explores this problem of modernity through a relationship. This relationship is Jack and Elizabeth. They both consider themselves to be orphans who moved to the Wicker Park area in the 1990s in Chicago. And they fall instantaneously in love after weirdly spying on one another through each other's bedroom windows. And when they meet, they become absolutely infatuated with one another. Throughout the novel, Jack is revealed to be a romantic who believes things like that when you fall asleep, your soul flies out of your body and meets another soul, and that's how we meet our soul mates. Elizabeth, on the other hand, is more scientific and data-driven, and so she questions such beliefs, and her first job is to dupe young college-aged men into falling in love with her through a series of strategically designed questions like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much did your parents love you as a child? The novel opens with Jack and Elizabeth purchasing a new apartment, a forever home in the Shipworks, which is a boutique apartment in the Wicker Park area of Chicago. And I think it's around 2015. And they both want this new forever home because they're both really just dissatisfied with their lives. Jack is dissatisfied with his job. He's an adjunct at a university and he doesn't feel respected. And Elizabeth is questioning the validity of her own relationship and whether or not her and Jack were actually even meant to be. And so through this novel, Nathan Hill explores this, often referred to as the ennui of the modern age, or like this feeling of constant dissatisfaction, a kind of ongoing emptiness in the modern world. So this book was made aware to me from a colleague of mine who is part of a book club. And this book has become quite popular because it was part of Oprah's book club list. And I ended up watching an interview with Nathan Hill and Oprah and a cast of other characters I'm unfamiliar with. And he discussed character development. That was one thing he mentioned. And interestingly, he said that, like, how we get to know people, we mostly get to know the surface. We hear stories that people tell themselves or stories they've been telling to themselves for a long time. But often those stories are inaccurate or even mere fabrications. And so throughout the course of the novel, the characters are revealed to the reader and the characters are also revealed to themselves. Jack, who comes from the prairie on Kansas, had a traumatic event happen to him when he was a young man that he'd never really dealt with. Elizabeth, on the other hand, she came from a family of great wealth, but her father was frankly abusive towards her and it seemed never really loved her. And so they both made an attempt to escape their families, move to Chicago and build a new life and a new identity. And I think the biggest theme in this book is the role of stories. It's everywhere in this story. Elizabeth, for example, her first job, again, is tricking young men into falling in love with her. But the men aren't aware that they are being tricked. They're not aware that they're being asked a series of questions to elicit specific emotional responses that will lead to something like a feeling of love. But rather, they tell themselves a story like, wow, well, this girl and I have an amazing connection. I haven't met anyone that I felt this way about in a long time. And so they tell themselves the story of love. Elizabeth's company that she works for, Wellness, she prescribes placebos to her patients. And so the medicines don't actually do anything, but because they believe that the medicines do, they are quite effective. But on the other side of this storytelling is this like scientific, data-driven aspect of reality, and that's seen in Jack's wearing like an armband. It's like a health band, and it gives him information about every aspect of his life, from his sleep life to his sex life to his exercise to his posture to his steps, and this becomes unbearable for Jack. Also, there's a scene where Elizabeth gives her son the marshmallow test. The marshmallow test, apparently, as it's explained in the book, is when you give a child one marshmallow, but you ask them to abstain from eating it for a while. And you tell them that if they don't eat it, then they will be rewarded with two. If they can abstain from eating the marshmallow, then it's more likely for them to be successful later in life, because they're focused on delayed gratification rather than instant gratification. But if they eat the marshmallow at first, they are potentially doomed. And of course, Elizabeth's son eats the marshmallow. But it's revealed later in the novel that her son simply wanted to pass the test and wanted to please his mother. And so the scientific, data-driven perspective on reality is brought into question. But the central story in this book is the story that she tells herself about her love for Jack. And she begins to question whether or not that love is real, or whether or not Jack is truly her soulmate, if he's the right one for her. And so in the book, she goes through many different experiments to try and test this hypothesis. And so, again, it's a book about the modern world. There's like Toby, their son, who is addicted to Minecraft, and whose mother at the end of every day says, don't forget to subscribe rather than good night, because it's too painful for her son to bear. There is like the health and digital tracking aspect of the modern world, with Jack's health band and with Elizabeth's placebo company. There's conspiracy in social media with Jack's father, who is incessantly posting because he believes he's not getting enough views and likes, because the algorithm is no longer feeding his posts to his relatives and friends. And so his conspiracies that he posts become more and more unbelievable and ridiculous. And then there's the role of algorithms as well, and how those algorithms have an impact on our own self-perception. And so this book, it really tackles a lot. And it seems that Nathan Hill was really interested in trying to get at the problem of modernity, the messiness of modernity. And so Nathan Hill is often compared to writers like Jonathan Franzen or David Foster Wallace. Jonathan Franzen, who explores the problem of family in his book, The Corrections, and David Foster Wallace, who explores the problem of addiction and entertainment in Infinite Jest. But this book, I noted, so on Reddit, there was a discussion about whether Nathan Hill should be included in the conversation with the likes of Jeffrey Eugenides and Franzen and Foster Wallace. And my conclusion is no. He's certainly more of a pop writer. His writing itself is mostly utilitarian. There are some passages that are quite beautiful. For example, whenever he describes the prairies of Kansas, it's really impressive. He writes, "The thing about the prairie is that it's easily mistaken for nothingness. That's what travelers often say at any rate. There's nothing here. Driving through the Flint Hills of east central Kansas and seeing no towns, no trees, no houses, nothing at all to interrupt the horizon. Just grass everywhere, in every direction, for what looks like a million miles. People see this landscape, and what it looks like to them is nothing. It looks empty. It looks like what land looks like before something else is done to it. A prairie does not have the grandeur of a mountain range, nor the austerity of a desert, nor the gothic mystery of a forest, nor the romance of the sea. A prairie is a lawn, and it's hard to have extravagant feelings about a lawn. Jack has a theory about this, about why the prairie is a disrespected landscape, why when we see it, we don't really see it. It's because you can't capture a prairie in a picture. It is notoriously difficult to depict a prairie two-dimensionally. Even to the naked eye, it already looks flat. This despite the fact that walking the Flint Hills can be exhausting, that a landscape that seems level at a distance can take your breath away when you're actually trudging up it. It's a great foreshortening that fools the eye, an illusion that you can keep on seeing even after you know it's an illusion. And then, if you try to paint it or photograph it, this already flat land is even further flattened. With nothing to provide perspective, a prairie transposed onto a 2D plane becomes almost abstract, a Rothko like field of tan and green, just pure disconnected from the physical world. Unlike the forests of the east or the mountains of the west, a prairie has no dimension, nothing in relief, very little visual drama, no contours for the light to sculpt, none of the things that create what we might traditionally call a view. That was one of my favorite passages in the book. The way that Nathan Hill describes nature, oddly, is the most affecting aspect of this book, not really his discussions of the trappings of modernity. And so it's a pretty good book. I do think that the characters often seem more in service to the themes and to this like neatly interwoven plot that is tidily wrapped up at the end, rather than the characters being the center themselves. And I think that's what makes a writer like Franzen so great. No, the loose ends aren't ever really tied up. The characters are left in a state of semi-resolution, and I think that's more accurate to life. Whereas in Nathan Hill's novel, and I haven't read his previous novel, Nyx, though I may, every problem is cleanly explained away, and the characters are reunited with like the snap of a fingers. And so while there are moments of real beauty in the book, I do find that it's mostly just like a plot-driven story that gets at some of the aspects of the problems of modernity. So yeah, I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. I really enjoyed reading something a little bit lighter, less heavy than what I'm used to. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it if that sounds like it's something up your alley. All right. Well, this is Blighted Pine Books. I appreciate you listening, and I hope you have a really good rest of your day. And yeah, don't buy stuff unless you really need it.